So, one of the things that, one of the most notable, most obvious stressors that whenever I work with people and in this class when we ask, well, you know, what are your primary stressors, time management always rises to the top. People saying, man, I don't feel like I'm in control of my time. So what does, let me ask you this just to start our minds thinking, what does time management have to do with stress management? Big answer or big question.
We all have things we're supposed to do during the day: eat, sleep, work, homework, school. We fill the gaps too full with other stuff that are needless, or then it just puts too much stress on the other factors of I need to be here this time, and one gets shuffled, everything else just cascades.
It's hard to have a lot of things on your plate and then how to add more things that may or may not be important, but you still put them on there and then the plate's too full. Is that what you're saying? Yeah. How many in here would say, oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say about worrying about things you can't control. You know, you're stressing about getting something done in time when really just stressing about it isn't helping you do anything about it.
I've heard of people, this is kind of new to me, but I've heard of people who, they just sit there and worry. Do you know what I mean? They're just, oh man. Instead of doing something about it, they're just sitting there. That just seems like the funniest thing of all time. To worry about something. Well, in my exploration of stress management over the many years I've been doing this, I have come upon quite a few really good time management programs or time management techniques, and most of them have really good merit. Most of them are very valuable. I'm going to show you at the end of today one simple one. It's not necessarily the very best one. It's a great one. I don't think there is a best one out there of time management. But what I want to play with today are some principles and some natural laws of behavior that can help us so that we have more sense of kind of what you were saying, is Caden, right? About the things that we can control versus the things we can't, and having a clear idea of those things, and then doing something about the things we can control. I want you to write down some of these things. I'm going to give you some natural, some definitions. I'd like you to write these down. So the first definition, is this coming across okay? The first definition and strangely is success. I want you to write, this is the definition of success. In relation to time management, it goes like this. The successful manager of time, is willing to do, the successful manager of time is willing to do that which the unsuccessful manager of time is not willing to do. The successful manager of time is willing to do that which the unsuccessful manager of time is not willing to do. What is the essence of that statement?
You do what has to be done whether or not you like it.
Okay, it may not involve your emotional attachment to it. Whether you do it or not, sometimes the feelings don't need to be involved there. You may not like it. But to be successful, now, you can plug nearly any role into there and it works, right? The successful athlete is willing to do, we were talking last night in our wellness coaching class, we were talking, there's a guy in there who's a Major League Baseball pitcher. And he was telling us of a pitcher, Roy Halladay, I think was his name. One of the best pitchers in the National League, or in the majors. And he said, this guy was so good. And he was telling some of the reasons why he was so good. But one of the things that he mentioned was that he kept a goal sheet, or he kept a book that had every goal that he wanted to set for himself and how he did after, you know, his evaluation of that, of every game. Every day, he said, every day he made these goals. He said he has books that thick of his making goals and then evaluating how he did on those goals. He said that's how he kept improving. He just kept getting better and better and better by being strict about this thing. Now, I'm not saying, well, that's what everyone should do. But the point was he was willing to do something that the unsuccessful pitcher not willing to do. In the case of time management, if you want to gain control of your time, there are some things that you have to do in order to make that happen. We're going to explore what those are. Okay, second one. Wisdom. Wisdom is knowledge rightly applied. Wisdom is knowledge rightly applied. When I was about 20, I got involved with something where I became far more sedentary. I didn't do what I was doing prior to that time, like in high school and that. I was very, very active in high school. And then I stopped being so active and I got really fat. I was like, I had 5 chins at one time. I was really huge.
Are you serious?
And it was a really, and I remember one time I was living in California and we went and we were playing basketball at this church. The church, and we were playing basketball. I hadn't played in a long time. And before that, I'd played a lot of basketball. And I'll never forget this. It was so impactful on me. I remember we went up and down the court like 2 or 3 times. And I was just wasted. I was so exhausted. It was such a sick feeling. I'd never done that. I'd never been that out of shape before. And then, on one occasion, I went up for a rebound, and there happened to be somebody with a camera, and he took a picture of me going up for this rebound. We were all in the picture, and this huge gut was sticking out. And he showed me the picture later. He says, Mike, check out this picture of you. And I said, this will never happen again. I said this to myself. I had this moment of, I will never let myself get this out of shape again. And it was at that point, and that was 30 years ago, when I said, I'm going to learn everything I need to know to get back in shape. Okay? So I started reading books, and I didn't even realize that there was stuff to learn about nutrition. I didn't even, the idea of eating right had never occurred to me. If there's food, you eat it. Doesn't matter what's in it. Because when you're an athlete, it doesn't matter a whole lot. You can it goes in and burn it up and you're good to go pretty much. Not really, but that's what we thought. And so I started learning all this stuff about how to, I read books. But what was it really that changed, that started changing me from 5 chins to less than 1, less than 2? And my gut going back in and all of those. What was it that changed that? Was it the stuff that I learned? It was applying it. It was applying the knowledge. It was applying the knowledge I had about, okay, here's some foods that maybe you shouldn't eat so much of. Here's the kind of exercise that will help you get rid of this thing that's sticking on you right now. And sure enough, you know, fell off. That was a kind of nice thing. But the idea here is we learn a lot of things in this class. You learn a lot of things. But knowledge is useless. It's absolutely useless. When it comes to your health and well-being, knowledge is worthless unless you apply it. And it's the same way with this time management stuff. I know 4 or 5 ways to manage my time, and they're all a little different. Useless information until you actually put it into practice. Okay. Next definition. I want you to think for a second. Time. Since we're talking about time management, what is time? You tell me. What is time? Not what time is it, but what is time? You ever stop to think about that? Einstein did a lot. It hurts my brain when I read what he said about. What's time? Say that again. What do you mean? So you said everything doesn't exist. Oh, time doesn't exist. We just use it to organize our lives. Good. Expand on that a little. There's not really such a thing as a time as it is, except what we make up. Is that what you're saying? What do you think? Expand on that, because I think you're in the right direction. I mean, if you think about it, I mean, we live on a planet that's going around a sun, and the way that it's spinning determines our days and nights. There's nothing absolute about those. I think that's what you're trying to say. But since it just happens to be convenient, we've made a convenient way to say, well, it's 4 in the afternoon. Well, it just happens to be where the Earth's spinning as it relates to the sun. Einstein said the same thing. He said, time is not really a thing of itself. It's the events in our days. The events of life are what time is, essentially. So he said, time is the events of life. That's a more accurate thing, I think, and I think that's what you're saying, than something to do with the clock. It's the events in life in sequence, one after another. Time is the events in life in sequence, one after another. Okay. Management. Management is the art or manner of controlling. The art or manner of controlling. Now, with these two definitions, time and management, I want you to take 30 seconds and make a working definition for time management based on those two definitions. Make a new line that says time management, and then combine those two to make a working definition of time management. Okay, so what did you get? Does anyone want to share what did you put down?
The art or manner of controlling life sequence of events one after another.
Okay, so we're controlling the sequence of events. Time management is not about controlling the time. It's about controlling the events and the sequence of them in our days. That's a different kind of conceptual focus. Think, okay, I can't do anything about the clock and how fast or slow it goes, but I can do something about the sequence. I remember the perfect analogy of this. When I was about 14, I went to California. I lived in Provo, but we went to California. A group of us were like Boy Scouts. And we went to California. We went to a beach. We went to Santa Monica Beach. Back then, it was a nice beach. I don't know how Santa Monica is now. But back then, it was a nice beach. And we all wanted to go body surfing. We didn't have the foggiest idea how to real surf. We wanted to go body surfing. And we thought that would be really great to do. So, you swim out there, and we've all done that, right? Has anyone ever been body surfing? You go out there and you swim out there in the ocean for a ways, and then you see this big wave coming, and then you swim really hard, and then you just kind of plank. You just kind of try to make your body straight, and the wave pushes you along, is the idea. It's kind of fun. Well, on this occasion, I was doing this. I swam way out there, and then I started swimming really hard, and I put my body that way, and then the wave just shot me right into the floor. Boom! And I hit my head, and it knocked me out almost. And I tried to recover, trying to get out of the water, and then as soon as I came up for air, another wave hit me, knocked me over. And I'm slowly going to the shore. It's not that far, but I didn't know that. All I knew is that I could not breathe. And so I was struggling again, came up, a third wave hit me, bam! Hit me, knocked me to the floor. And by this time I was just, and it happened one more time after that, and by that time I was at where the water was only like this deep, it kept pushing me forward. And I thought I was going to die. I was just really exhausted. My friends came and, well, let's help you up. And I rested, and then we went back out again. But that is how, when you describe how people's lives are, that is oftentimes a pretty accurate description, where as soon as you come up for air, bam, another wave hits you, and bam, another wave hits you. Instead of riding the waves, it's not a good feeling to be out of control. And that's the best picture that comes to my mind of that stress associated with, oh, I got to do another thing. Oh, I got to do another thing. Oh, man, another thing still? Holy cow. And then by the time you're just wasted at the shore. Oh, I can't do anything. I'm just going to get sick. So, time management is managing or controlling the events. That's a totally different feeling. We call that the proactive mode instead of the reactive mode. Now, if we want to gain control of our lives, we need to gain control of our time. There's been dozens and dozens of studies on stress and control. And it really is like this. As control goes up, stress levels tend to go down. As the perception of control goes down, stress levels go up. Would you say that's accurate in your own experience? Yeah, the more out of control you feel. Anyone in here ski? Do you have any skiers in here? Like real skiing, not boarding, but skiing? No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. So, do you remember the first time you went skiing? Was it like moguls, powder, you were flying through it? No, you weren't, right? No, was it a great feeling that first day? No, it wasn't. I remember the first day I went skiing, back when skiing was $5 for a lift pass. It was great. You remember those days.
How much was gas?
35 cents. We didn't make very much back then, but anyway, I was at Sundance back. It was structured differently, and I remember getting off the lift, and we were on skis, and I mean, they didn't even have boards back then. And I remember getting off and falling. I was with my best friend, his name was Wade, and we kind of shushed ourselves over. We were taking lessons, but we thought, well, we can handle this. How hard can it be? And we got off the lift, and we kind of shushed ourselves over, and then he kind of took off ahead of me, and then he disappeared. Where did he go? So I didn't know how to ski. I didn't have the foggiest idea. All it felt like was just, okay, I'm moving along too fast, fall over. Because I didn't know how to stop. I mean, no one trained. If you don't get taught, you don't know. You can do things like turn or snowplow or whatever. Well, I come to the edge, and there's this big cliff and moguls all the way down, and he's at the bottom, and one ski's here and one ski's clear over there. And I went, "Wade, are you okay?" He looks up, "I'm fine." "Did you have fun?" "No, I hated it." "I don't want to ski." And no control. Are you a good skier now? So when you go up skiing now, do you have that sense of panic when you get off the lift? And
if it's icy.
If it's icy, yeah, that makes it a little... But in general, when we have control, we have less stress. There's a direct relationship, and I think that's the case with everything. And when we sense our control over our daily events, stress levels go down. Now, since we're talking about control, let's analyze this in an interesting way. I'm going to put a spectrum up here, There are some things over which we have total control. There are some things over which we have no control at all. What might fall into this category? Things in our universe, in our lives, about which we can do absolutely nothing.
People's actions.
Okay. So we might think we can influence these, but ultimately they choose what they do, right? What else did I heard? Taxes? Man, I wish I could control that.
The weather.
Right, you can't do anything or most any other environmental conditions. Can't do anything about that. What else? What are some other things that over which we have absolutely no control?
Family traits.
So genetic kinds of things. Yeah, I can't do anything about the fact that I'm short. I wish I were tall. I'm not. And I would give anything to be 6'3". My whole life would have been different. If I'd have been Dave's size, man, can imagine how much money I would have earned playing basketball for somebody. But I'm short. Too bad. Can't do anything about it. What else?
Construction. The freeway, traffic jams, and that kind of stuff.
Okay, so man-made, others. So this would be natural and other environmental conditions. What is the appropriate response to things over which we have no control?
Nothing you can do about it.
Yeah, nothing you can do about it. The appropriate response is to accept it. At least if we want inner peace. We get so upset at stuff that we can't do anything about. And we've talked about that plenty. Okay, the other side of this spectrum, total control, what might fall into this? My actions. Anything else? Yeah. My attitude,
How you react.
emotions, my reactions, my thoughts. Me things, right? We ultimately control these things. We may not. All of us in here are enlightened. We get this. Most people, a lot of people, they don't understand that they're choosing how they feel about stuff and how they think about stuff and how they react to stuff. But we get it in here. Okay? Now, in between these, there's two more categories. There are things that things we can control, but think we can't. Things we can control, but we don't think we can. What might fall into this category?
Weight.
Okay, so
How we look. That kind of stuff.
my weight, my appearance.
Attitude.
Okay, so people might be over here, they might put this over here. Yeah, I can't help it that I'm angry at you. But we can, right? Okay, what else?
How smart you are.
Good, yeah. Intelligence.
We're not good at certain things like sports.
Beliefs.
Yeah.
My beliefs about what I can do. And I'm going to throw some more things out. Do you ever know anyone who has stopped smoking? Is smoking easy or difficult to stop? It's one of the most challenging of all of the addictions, yet people do it all the time. I know plenty of people who said, I cannot possibly stop smoking. Or I can't stop drinking my Coke. Of course you can. You may not choose to. You know, if you want to keep smoking, that's between you and your lungs, but you really can. We all have... okay, I'm not going to go there. Are there things we think we can't? No, excuse me. Yeah, think we can't.
We can't control, but think we can.
Can't? Yes. Thank you. What would fall into this? I can think of pretty much only one thing. Yeah. We think we can control others, but we really can't. Now, the reason I put this on the board is because if we're looking at controlling the events of our days, the sequence of events, we have to have in mind what we can control. And that doesn't include any of this. So we just kind of push this over to the side. Time management has nothing to do with this. As soon as you start sensing control, you earn the right to a very powerful feeling. As soon as you start sensing control of your time and your life, you earn the right to a very powerful feeling. I want to go back on last week, Tuesday or Thursday. I gave you a definition for inner peace. I want to give it to you again and add a component. This is the definition for inner peace. What did we say last time? Does anyone have access to that really fast?
Having harmony, balance, and consistency in our life.
And then I said achieved through.
Control of events while living according to our values.
Okay, so this is the controlling events part. Inner peace is having harmony, balance, and consistency in our lives. We achieve it through living according to our values and controlling our time. And do I have to? Inner peace is having harmony, balance, and consistency in our lives. We achieve it through the appropriate control of events, in other words, managing our time, and living according to our highest principles, our highest values. Having harmony, balance, and consistency in our lives achieved through appropriate control of events and living according to our highest principles. So today we're talking about controlling events. What we're really after is inner peace. Whether that comes from successfully accomplishing things, or, you know, if you're a surfer, and Bobby, do you surf? Yeah. So when you're surfing and you're up on the wave, not getting shoved down into the floor, and you're on the wave, and I don't even know how you stand when you surf. You're just, when you're surfing and you're in control, how does that feel? It's a great feeling, isn't it? And nobody can take that from you when you're in control. No matter what the environment points at you, you're in control if you're handling the events of your life. Now, I think it's interesting. Well, no, I'm not going to go with that. There was one statistic that is a fascinating one, or not a statistic, but an event. In 1830, true story, in 1830 the Congress closed down the U.S. Patent Office. Actually, there was a guy who worked in there in the U.S. Patent Office. What happens in the U.S. Patent Office? What do they do?
People invent things and then they claim them as theirs.
Right. So new inventions, well, and so nobody else can invent the same exact thing, right?
Right.
So in 1830, get this, in 1830, the guy there said, he closed the office and he said, everything that will ever be invented has been.
Airplanes weren't even done by then.
No. He was so sure that they'd invented everything that it would ever be invented. And he was fired, and they opened it since, and we keep... But the thing, what I'm wanting us to focus on here is a lot of the times we have these beliefs that keep us from going after and doing the things that because we think, oh, I can't possibly do that. I like the story of the circus elephants. Does anyone know how they train circus elephants? Yeah. As soon as an elephant is born, if it's going to be a circus elephant, they put this big metal thing, the steel thing around its foot, his leg, connected to a chain to a post in the middle, and they move it around this circle. And they essentially train this circus elephant to that whenever it has a thing on its leg, then it can only go in that circle. Now the point is, it usually takes no more than 4 to 6 weeks, and after 4 to 6 weeks, if this elephant ever has anything on his leg, it doesn't matter if it was a flimsy rope or a chain or practically nothing, if it thinks it has connected that when that chain's on its leg, that's all it can do. It has what we call what's the word for it? I forgot the name of it. I just had it for a second. But essentially, we create limiting beliefs for ourselves. No, it's called premature cognitive commitment. That's what it is. A premature cognitive commitment. In other words, we say in our minds, this is all I can do. Well, that's not true. We're infinitely capable. But we still say, oh, I can't do it. It's too big. Too much. You can do it. Now, so the rest of today, I want to show you this method of managing your time that really is powerful. But before we do that, I want to ask you, there is one thing that I think is worth looking at carefully, because I don't know if it was you who said there's many unimportant things that come onto our plate. Didn't you mention that at the beginning?
We fill them up with endless texts and surfing the internet when we should be doing other things.
Yeah. We would call these things, let's give them a name. Time wasters. Now I'm not saying, okay, never do these things. But what are some of the things that we know, we or people we know do, where we should say, you're spending a little too much time on something that probably isn't very productive or useful or beneficial to you or somebody else? What are some common things? You mentioned texting.
Angry Birds.
It's a great stress relief.
Yeah. Well, that's what he said. Don't always avoid it, but they do have their place. Imagine.
World of Warcraft.
Let me just tell you a couple quick stories about those. A few years ago, I had a kid in this class. He told us at one time he was kind of addicted to these games. This was before they were quite as sophisticated as they are today. Yeah, I don't. And when you say that, I don't even have the foggiest idea what you mean by that. Because I know I would get addicted to them myself because they're so fun, and I just don't even want to go there. But he said he was so proud of himself because he said, I spent 24 hours non-stop playing this particular game. Non-stop. We said, did you eat? Did you? He said, well, somebody brought me some food. Did you go to the bathroom? He said, I just didn't need to. He was so proud, and everyone probably would apply up here. Another interesting statistic, they have determined that on the average, adults watch 4 hours on the average, 4 hours of television a day, and kids watch 6 hours of television a day. By the time a child has reached age 18, he has seen 28,000 murders. Essentially, and I'm looking because I want to get this right, in an average lifetime, a person spends 13 years watching television. Imagine what you could do. Yeah. I mean, imagine if you, and I'm not saying, okay, don't ever do that. I enjoy a good ball game or a good movie just like everyone else. But when it eats into, we wonder, why we're so stressed. And then we look at our time and what we've done with it. Think about it, if you spent 4 hours, and the one that came to my mind was practicing the violin. Imagine how good you would be. Yeah, I mean, think of all the things you could do with those 4 hours.
I just did a paper about that, and I found the same statistic. It's like the average kid watches more than 4 hours of TV each day, 28 hours a week, 2 months per year, or by the time someone's 65, 9 years.
It's amazing. That is a lot of time. Where did you find that?
I found it on the internet, but it was the AC Nielsen company.
Okay, yeah. Now, here's the interesting thing. Before I show you this really simple time management technique, here's the interesting thing. I used to do this. I don't anymore, but I used to do this where I would have everyone in this class go home and for 3 or 4 days' time, like a diet log, I would have them do a time log. In other words, I would have them write down everything that they do during a day as it happens. Does that make sense how I said that? So instead of everything they eat, it's how they spent every minute, essentially, of their day. What do you think I found? What were some of the things that were every single time what happened? Okay, one is they did watch an inordinate amount of TV. Yeah, here's what, kind of those two things and everything else that came to our mind. We have way more time than we think we do. Everyone says, oh, I'm so busy. But when you analyze your time, as far as the clock is concerned and what you do during those times, we have a lot of downtime. We have a lot of time where we're not doing things. It's amazing, the most busy people that I know still have time to do stuff, that's, we'd consider, some of these kinds of things. They just don't spend a lot of time there. Now, the solution to all of these time wasters, and we can make a long list. That would be easy to do. But there's one solution to all of these things that solves the stress we have about time, and that is one word: plan. And I know some people, oh, geez, I don't want to plan. That doesn't sound very spontaneous. I'm a spontaneous person. You ever known spontaneous people? I just want to be spontaneous. Really? The busiest people I know, or the people who are most productive, are also extremely spontaneous. But they have to start with a place where they can allow that spontaneity to happen. So I'm going to show you, this what I'm handing out is a very, very simple and absolutely workable method of time management. We're going to go through this together. Okay. Now, a couple quick things at first. Oh, I'm sorry. So, I mentioned this earlier in the semester when we were talking about mindfulness, and we talked about worrying, because we said there's a difference between worrying and planning. And I said planning is bringing future moments into the present so appropriate control can be applied. That's that first line there. Stephen Covey, who wrote 7 Habits and probably has done as much for people's productivity as anybody else, said, spending the most valuable thing we can do to positively impact our days is to spend 10 to 15 minutes planning it. You know, and the question that we could ask ourselves is, how frequently do I spend planning what's coming up? Now, the other component of this, and this is something that I pretty much, it occurred to me, ultimately we always do exactly what we want to do. Somebody in here, I don't know if it was you or somebody else, said, well, we have to do these things and we have to do these things. Well, you don't have to do anything. I remember on one occasion my brother lived in Salt Lake, and he called me up and says, Mike, will you come and help me clean my garage? We really need some help cleaning my garage. I said, sorry, I have too many things to do. I just can't come help you. That was what I said. I can't come help you. I'm too busy. About 2 weeks later, he called me up, Mike, we're going biking up now over Sundance. Do you want to come? I had the same amount of stuff to do. Oh yeah, I'll come down. I'll be right down. Dropped everything. The same amount. And it occurred to me as I was driving home from there, and we had a great time. I always do exactly what I want to do. And it's never otherwise. Now, I know that if I have a job and not being there, there are consequences. But nobody's holding a gun to your head saying, you got to be at this class right now. You got to be at this job right now. That's never the case for us. We always have freedom to choose everything that we do in our days. There are no have-tos. They are all choose-tos. Does that make sense? As soon as you start thinking that, wow, I'm choosing to go to class right now. You can also go, well, if I'm choosing to go to class, maybe I should choose something else that would be better for me. Not this class, but some other class that you have that you would. But get that in your heads. Every moment of your day, you're choosing not having to be there. There's no exceptions to that. In our culture, it's all that way. Now, if that's the case, then here's a very simple model or simple method that, and I've used this off and on I learned this when I was about 25, and actually this is really close to, I don't know if you remember, it's still a viable company, but they're not as strong as they used to be. It was the Franklin Covey Time Management Company. Yeah, this came from one of the executives there who would teach it to companies. This is what he would teach to the companies there. I liked it so much that I just adopted it for myself. And it still works every time I try it. I'm going to fly through this just a little bit because it's in your book also, and you're going to get to do this. I'm going to give you an assignment at the end, but I want to make sure I get this all in. But the way that I would do this, when I'm planning, and now I do everything myself, I do digitally. I just use Gmail or the calendar that they have and fill up my calendar that way. I don't have a planner anymore like I used to, but I still, through all the technology that is available, I do the same thing essentially. But whenever we do our planning, the first thing we should do in this process, we are asking ourselves these two questions: what are my highest priorities? In other words, what do I value most? And what can I do about them? Those are the questions we should have, rather than what do I have to do today? We should ask instead, what are my highest priorities? What do I value most? What can I do about those today? You've all seen the story or the analogy of the jar with the rocks, right? Has anyone not seen that before? Does anyone have no idea what I'm talking about? So, really? So they have this I'll just paint this picture for you really fast. But you have this jar, and let's say I had a whole bunch of different sized rocks, and I bring over some rocks and I put it in the jar. I fill the jar up with these really big rocks. Okay? And I'd ask, is the jar full? No? Rocks are up to there, right? But what else do we know? If I take smaller rocks, I can put those in there as well. I could take sand, put that in there as well, fill it up. I could take water and fill it up also. Now, what's the point of that? And it's not, you can always do more stuff. What?
I was just going to say that you feel you're kind of like the most important things first and everything else later.
Yeah, what if I instead filled my thing with sand? How many of those big rocks could I put in then? Not any. Now, if we fill our days with the equivalent of sand, in other words, the not very important things, those most important things never make it in there. Do you follow me? But if we put the most important things in there first, we can add those other things, but we're doing the things that are most important to us on a regular basis. Okay? So the way we do this, first of all, we take, it says cross out the non-discretionary times. And so what that means essentially is when we have to work, we can't do anything else. When we're in class, we can't do anything else, so we kind of schedule those. When we have meetings with people, we stick those on our calendar. Duh. You know, that's kind of an obvious thing. Then we consider our roles. Now the reason why I like this is because when most people do their time management, pretty much what do? To-do list, right? I'm going to stick everything I got to do. And then, what do you usually do when you see your to-do list?
You stop looking at it?
Yeah, you just get a headache, right? What did you say? I heard somebody else.
You get stressed.
What?
You get stressed.
Okay. As you're looking at those, though, what do you naturally gravitate to? Yeah. And it may not be the most important ones. Frequently, it's the easiest one. Man, I just can't do that. I can't handle the book review, so I'm gonna check Facebook. So, the way this starts is we look at our roles. In other words, we see, okay, in my life, I've chosen to be a dad. I've chosen to be a father. I've chosen to be a teacher. I've chosen to be a coach. I've chosen to be an athlete. I've chosen to be all of these things. And that's the most important things. And so it says in phase 3, we ask, in each of those roles, is there something I can do about those? This is different in a checklist because these are the big rocks. You know, and so, for example, let's say I'm making this list of things, and as a dad, one of my roles is a dad, and I think, well, you know, I haven't spent any time lately with my youngest son, so we're going to go jump on the trampoline. I'm just going to go out and spend some time on the tramp with my son. Now, in a normal checklist, that would never make it. I'm not going to jump on a tramp. I got to study for a test. But my relationship with my son is so important to me. It's part of my, you know, it's important for that role. So I'm going to put it on there. So I'll say, and there is a checklist that kind of goes on there, but jump on the tramp with Ben. Okay? Those are the big rocks. Okay? So we go through each of our roles and we ask ourselves, what can I do in this role today that would significantly add value to that role? Some days there might not be anything at all. Other days there might be several things. If I want my relationship with my wife to be a good one, I will always include on my to-do list things that involve her. Because that's the most important things. That's the big rocks. Okay? So, and then, down to phase 4, we make a list of daily tasks, including those from phase 3. So we go through and we say, okay, I want to go jump on the tramp with Ben. I know I need to meditate. I'm going to practice some yoga. Got to clean the garage. We don't have any food, so buy some. Let's say that, and we just unload on the paper everything that we can think of that we need to do, both in relation to our roles, well, almost entirely in relation to our roles, but other things that come to our head. Oh yeah, I got to find a book finally, or I got to open the book for the book review that's due in 2 weeks. Oh yeah, I should do something. I should read the preface or something at least. So, and we make this list of all the things that we need to do. Now, this is where, so let's see, what else? Let's add a few more things. Workout, because you want to be healthy and stuff, and then write a paper on time management. And TV watching. Let's see. What else could we... laundry. There you go. Okay. Now, we make this list. We put everything on paper. Why is that so important?
So it loads it from here.
Right. If you don't put it on paper, you'll have to remember it. And you may not, but if it's on paper, you don't have to remember it. It's going to be there. Or if it's on your digital planners. Now, the next thing, and this is where it turns from the to-do list to the I'm doing what's most important to me.
Is there a rule on what to do if like you forgot to write something really important down and it comes up while you're doing your list and stuff?
So then you just go,
You just reorganize.
oh yeah. Big thing. Okay, the big thing shows up. No, hold on to that idea because that's a really important. It's a really important question. So hold on just a second. So we go. So here's what we do at phase 5. We go through each of these items, and we give them a level of importance to us. We give them a letter. Okay. So we go through each one, we say, today, this is, or this week, these items are of this or this or this level of importance, and we use the A, B's, and C's. So A's, they are the most important things. B's, they're quite important, but not the most. And C's, they're kind of important. They wouldn't have made it on the list if they weren't some importance to us, right? So we go through and we say, okay, jump on a tramp with Ben. It's an A because it's been a while. I meditated yesterday, so I can handle that. Got to do my yoga. Clean the garage. I can't get my car in the garage, but won't be snowing for a few months, so that's a C. Buy some food. We've got a little bit in there. Read the preface, good call. Workout. That's always gets an A. Write a paper. If it's due tomorrow, does that get an A or a C? Yeah, so you just, it all depends on your circumstances. The next thing you do with this is you go through each item, you go through your A's and ask yourself, of these A's, which one is the most important one? And that's entirely up to you. So I would say, okay, my most important thing is read the preface. Then I'm going to work out. do yoga. So we go through that way. Now I know we're running a little over time, but I've got to give you the assignment, and I don't want you to miss this. After we've done each of these, we go through the B's the same way and the C's the same way. What have we just done? You've planned your day according to your values. Now, the natural inclination is to go down here and, man, I think I'm going to do B3 because that seems like it would be the most fun. If you want to stay on top of the wave, you start with A1. And then you go to A2. And if something pops in that is now an A1, then you do that. I mean, there's flexibility built into this. But I want you to, there's one sentence that I want you to write this down. It is so important. This is number 7 on this page. Actually, just refer to this. Don't write it down, but refer to this. It'll actually be on the quiz, I promise. This is called character. It says, character is the ability to carry out a worthy decision after the emotion of making the decision has passed. So when you're in your day and something that's not an A1 or an A2 pops in, and you have a choice point, and somebody says, hey, we're going to go watch the football game on TV. It's a Sunday, and you're going to go watch the football game on TV. Do you want to come? And you're at A2. Character says, you say, no. I'm going to get my A2 done. That is how you start riding the waves instead of getting slammed into the ground. Your assignment. Does this all make sense for you? And all of this is in the book. It's very thoroughly written in there. But your assignment, I want you to do this for a period of 2 weeks every day just to test it. What that means is you're going to spend about 10 minutes every day after, because you'll have done this 1 through 3 once, and then you've got that down. You'll decide your roles. But every day, you'll make this list, and then you'll apply the letters and numbers to them, and then you'll follow through on those. At the end of 2 weeks, I'm going to hand out a page that will ask you how well you did this and what kind of an effect it had on you and would you consider doing in the future. And I know some of you already have this or that time management program. It's okay. I want you to test this one out just to see if it's useful or not. Okay? It's not the only one. Then I'll give you the assignment. Or I'll, okay.